Hello and welcome to the 15th episode of this second season of the Denver Homes Market Report, Denver metro area's monthly real estate podcast. This is Ricky.schoonover of Mode Denver Real Estate. I sure hope you enjoyed last month's episode. We had a pretty fun, information-packed show. We talked about last year's August 2020 and how we compared to this year's August 2021. You know, we have seen a bit of a slowdown here in the local Denver real estate market. And that may surprise some people as we dove into the past a little bit deeper to see just what may be happening. Turns out there were a few factors at play. One of the main ones is buyer fatigue. And that's a real thing. That's when buyers just can't seem to win the bid, almost no matter how high they bid up the price for the house. It only takes a few of those massive bidding wars only to lose time and time again. However, the biggest factor is inventory. When there is just nothing out there for sale that actually meets your criteria, really, there's only two ways to fix that one. Either you change your criteria or you adjust your expectations. And that is sometimes a hard pill to swallow. I mean, sometimes it can be difficult to accept the fact that, where your expectations are and then where the actual real estate market is. And when they're on different planets, it's just tough. The next thing you can do is, check back in with your mortgage lender. See if you can raise your price range and hopefully uncover some homes that you had not already seen due to the fact that, you had a price range that you were hoping to stay below at a certain price point. I see this often where sometimes we create this idea in our heads, and usually this is almost with no regard to the actual real estate market or any time spent analyzing the actual prices. And I hear this so often. Ricky, I need 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms at least, and at least a 2-car garage. And I don't want to spend anything over $500,000. And I really want to be in either this neighborhood or that neighborhood. Well, that's all fine and dandy. The issue is the cheapest 3-2 in those particular neighborhoods sold last month for $575,000. And that was a fixer-upper. And then you get this quick response, right? Well, I'd be okay with a fixer-upper. Well, of course you would. Just about anyone out there shopping for a home is okay with a fixer-upper. That's nothing new. The issue is not it being a fixer-upper. The issue is the price will not be anywhere near $500,000 anytime soon. We'll need to either raise your price to around that $575 to even $600 price point, or we need to realign your expectations, meaning less bedrooms or less bathrooms or a different neighborhood. And speaking about different neighborhoods, that's a big if. I mean, if there are less expensive neighborhoods to even consider. So that's buyer fatigue and also aligning your expectations with what the market actually has to offer. These are both related to low inventory. That was the story last month, and it'll be interesting as we get into today's podcast if the inventory situation has changed. Maybe it's improved, or perhaps maybe it's even gotten a little worse. I can tell you the market seems like it has continued to slow ever so slightly. I mean, really since past spring. However, we'll have to wait a little later in this podcast today when we get to the numbers. But before we go there, let's talk to my potential sellers out there. This has been an interesting year to say the least. And the government has been knowingly, or perhaps unknowingly, pushing the prices of real estate through the roof. Now you may be taking pause, especially if you sold your house this past spring. I mean, we all saw the demand shoot up. We all saw the bidding wars and the headlines. We all saw sellers over the spring sell for far more than their home was worth, even just a few months prior. We all saw the "we pay cash for homes" types, those iBuyer type schemes pop up all over. The reason for this, or at least in large part, boils down to the federal government's fiscal policy. You see, the government often buys up our debt. The reason they do this is so that it frees up money in the economy, and the banks can then continue to make more loans. If a bank only has, say, $1 billion and they loaned it all out, they wouldn't have to wait until they collect that money, along with the interest, but it takes time. And they would not have the funds to keep on lending more loans. So Fannie and Freddie step in, and currently they are buying upwards around 85% of all mortgage loans. This takes pretty much all the pressure off the lenders, so they can just keep writing loans, keep making money, keep passing out money, because they know the government's going to buy the loan anyway. They don't have to service it. They don't have to wait for you to start making your payments before they can make more loans. Now, normally the government only buys about 50% of the loans. This is part of what's fueling that crazy demand. Banks have had funds freed up to make more loans, keep the interest rates low, and the requirements in place right now on homeowners are pretty minimal. This means many more people are able to buy a home. They qualify. However, good old supply and demand. When you make monetary policy where you are making it easier for buyers to get a loan, you are also increasing the size of that buyer pool. And increased competition leads to price increases. And then the bidding wars kick in. And then the sky's the limit. So if you sold your home back in April, May, and maybe even June of this past year, 2021, congratulations. You likely hit the real estate timing jackpot. So, if you were thinking of selling and did not pull the trigger over this past spring, don't worry, not all is lost. But don't expect a repeat of that magnitude the following spring there in 2022. This last 2021, it was the perfect storm coming out of that pandemic. Low interest rates, huge buy-in by the government, and they were sending out thousands of dollars in stimulus money pretty much to everyone who pays taxes. This all created that huge pool of buyers who kind of stepped off the radar here recently. As the stimulus money dries up, and once the government backs off buying 85% of all the mortgage loans, you're going to see interest rates rise just a bit. And the banks are going to start increasing those requirements on the borrowers as well. Now, I'm not saying it's not a good time to sell. Right now is a great time to sell. But you may not make as much as your neighbor did just a few months ago in the middle of that spring storm. Speaking of sellers, let's see why now is a great time to sell. You see, last year, September 2020, we had 23,000 homes available on the market, and we closed 11,233 deals in that same month, September 2020. Now, let's fast forward to this past September, the one we just closed out, 2021. We had 12,000 homes available for all the month of September 2021. That's almost 50% less homes to sell than we had last year for the same month. So, what do you think that did for our numbers this month? Of course, we only sold 8,891 homes in September 2021. That's versus the 11,233 homes we sold last year for the same month. They're still pretty solid stats. We had almost 50% less inventory to sell, but we still sold almost 80% of what we sold last year. Bottom line, as we head into the fall and following on to winter, the feds are watching the numbers closely, and they are chomping at the bit to tighten up this fiscal policy. And once they do, the market will make a correction. I hope they do this slowly and methodically so that we end up with a soft landing rather than a crash. So, do I think prices will come down? It is likely in some areas. However, there will be plenty of areas where the prices really don't come down, but the increases simply slow down just a little bit. You won't see these crazy deals where one house hits the market at $500K. That one gets bid up to $575K. Then the next home nearby, that one comes on the market at $600K, and that one gets bid up to $650. Then yet another nearby home hits the market at $675, and that one even sells. I mean, that's just not sustainable, and that's not going to continue. In fact, that scenario has already dropped off in the recent months. Now, the double-edged sword of the prices in real estate softening a bit, it's directly related to the banks also tightening up their borrower requirements. So, if today you can afford a $500,000 home, 6 to 8 months from now, you may find you may only qualify for $450,000. The tough part of that equation is that $500,000 home, 5 to 8 months from now, will probably be worth $475,000. So buyers may actually be losing ground as the market softens, not gaining ground as it would first appear. This is why the old saying, well, Ricky, I'm just going to wait 6 to 8 months and save up some money, that almost never works out in your favor as the buyer. It just does not work. So if you're a seller, this winter may be one of the best winter seasons in years. The prices were artificially inflated by this government programs, and at least for now, you'll be riding on those coattails. Buyers still have plenty of buying power. Banks are freely making loans, even below 3%, 30-year fixed loans. Those rates are not going up yet. The feds keep talking about it, but so far, they are not acting on it. They're letting that inflation rise a little bit. So let's close out today's show. Sellers, let's get you listed on the market as soon as possible. We still have those loose federal guidelines and the incredibly low inventory. So what that means for you is you're going to have lots of qualified buyers and very little competition as far as other houses available for sale. Then for my buyers, don't wait for the market to soften, because once they do, your borrowing power, will also be hindered, and your interest rates are going to be higher. Buyers get the double-edged sword with the appearance that they are paying less, because the home price maybe was a little bit lower, only to find out it's harder and more expensive to borrow money, and that cheaper home ends up costing them more in fees and interest on their mortgage. The only people who make out are the very, very wealthy. The folks who have tons of liquidity and can swoop in and buy houses for cash. However, let's be honest, I really don't see a crash. Nothing like we saw back in 2010, where the mortgage loans go way too lax. And then we have this domino effect where the housing market plunges. I don't see that. But if it happens, the rich folks can swoop in with all their cash and start buying up homes for pennies on the dollar, while the rest of us are too worried about our own jobs, our own future, and the banks will only be lending money to those who really don't need to borrow money. That's really the kicker. And that's, my friends, where you get this term, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Those are in the market downturns. Now, do not try to time the real estate market. I say this all the time to my members. Do not do it. Leave that to your stock portfolio. Leave that to your crypto craze. Leave that to your meme stocks. Do all that gambling over there. Go to Vegas, for Christ's sakes. Do not gamble on your home. Always think about your home as a bit of a longer-term security. Buy a home that you can live in for at least the next 5 to 10 years. All right, I sure hope you enjoyed today's podcast. This is, once again, Ricky Schoonover of Mode Denver Real Estate. If you have any real estate related questions or mortgage related questions, please give me a call, 720-688-5110. And please tune in each month as we go over the current state of affairs here in the Denver real estate market. Have a great month as the fall weather rolls in. We'll catch up in a month. So let's see how this October goes.